Hello folks, and welcome to the channel. Today's discussion will be under the heading Social Dynamics, Power, and the Persistence of Corruption. Let's have a look inside. Human societies do not fail because people lack ideals. They fail because incentives overpower ideals. Across history, every system designed to improve conditions for humanity has faced the same opposing force: corruption. Not as a moral abstraction, but as a strategic process that predictably emerges whenever and wherever power concentrates. This episode examines social dynamics through that lens, not cynically, not hyperbolically, but through foundational realism. If we want to understand why institutions drift, why reforms stall, and why well-intended systems repeatedly underperform, we must understand how power attracts influence and how influence is strategically captured. First off, discuss systems, potential, and cascading failure. Every system has a range of potential, what it could achieve if its resources, incentives, and human capital were aligned with its stated purpose. What history shows, however, is that systems almost never reach that potential. The gap between potential and performance has consequences. As systems underperform, morale declines, competence erodes, high-integrity participants disengage or exit. Over time, lowered expectations normalize dysfunction, and insufficient outcomes become acceptable as inevitable. This degradation is not sudden collapse. It's a slow attrition, a compounding effect that leaves systems technically functional but strategically hollow. Let's consider social dynamics as strategic systems. Social systems are not neutral. They are competitive environments composed of actors or players with unequal power, asymmetrical access to information, incentives that reward certain behaviors over others, and rules that can be reinterpreted or rewritten. Most participants operate in good faith, but systems are not shaped by averages. They are shaped by the most strategically effective actors. Over time, those actors learn how to navigate rules, exploit gaps, and convert procedural authority into durable advantage. This is not a failure of character, it is a failure of incentive design. Let's consider corruption, not as cynicism, but as structural realism. Corruption is often misunderstood as rare deviance or personal immorality. In reality, it is humanity's oldest and most persistent counterforce to progress. Corruption emerges whenever authority is centralized, when accountability is diffused, when incentives reward extraction over stewardship. Every system founded on ethical principles degrade when their incentive structures drift. Checks and balances slow corruption, but history shows they rarely eliminate it. Over time, rules decay, enforcement weakens, and narratives are reshaped to justify the new equilibrium, as we have previously discussed. This is not pessimism, it is again a pattern of recognition. Let's consider strategic capture and power scaling. The effort invested in corrupting a system scales with the power that the system controls. This principle explains why minor institutions attract little attention, but powerful institutions attract patient, well-funded, long-term influence campaigns. Corruption is not impulsive, it is a strategic investment. Actors rationally spend years, capital, and influence to gain leverage over institutions whose decisions yield outsized returns. The higher the power, the greater the incentive to capture it, quietly rather than confront it openly. Let's consider normalized corruption, the legal pathway, so to speak. One of the most effective forms of corruption is not illegal behavior, it is legalized influence. The evolution of modern law reflects this dynamic. Regulatory frameworks that once constrained monopolies, limited money in governments, and separated private power from the public authority were gradually dismantled. The redefinition of corporate entities as political actors, exemplified by decisions such as Citizens United, for instance, did not invent corruption. It normalized and scaled it. Influence became procedural, defensible, and abstracted behind legality. This is just one example of many that we could lay out here, but it makes our point clearly. What was once overt pressure became institutional access. Let's consider organic drift and malicious intent. Not all corruption begins with malicious intent. Systems naturally drift as incentives shift. However, it is critical not to obscure a second reality. Malicious actors actively seek positions of power with the explicit goal of exploiting them. These actors are not accidental beneficiaries of system flaws. They are strategic participants who identify leverage points, invest resources over time. They embed influence across personnel, policy, and narratives. Historical criminal enterprises, intelligence organizations, and financial networks have long understood this. Capture is quieter, cheaper, and more durable than coercion. Why corruption persists despite awareness. Humanity is not ignorant of corruption. What we lack is effective immunity. Attempts to constrain corruption repeatedly fail because enforcement is controlled by the system itself. Oversight becomes politicized. Complexity obscures accountability. The public bears diffuse costs while insiders reap concentrated benefits. The result is a stable but degraded equilibrium, functional enough to prevent revolt, yet inefficient enough to preserve hierarchy. Corruption as a hierarchical virus. Once corruption reaches the upper levels of hierarchy, its effects propagate outward and downward. Incentives realign. Loyalty is rewarded. Dissent is isolated. Resources flow towards consolidation rather than service. This dynamic explains why corruption at the top rarely stays contained. Local institutions, enforcement bodies, and administrative layers begin to mirror the priorities of the power center, not through conspiracy, but through aligned self-interests. What spreads is not ideology, but incentive. Imagining a non-corruptible system. Folks, for the first time in history, humanity is approaching the possibility of governance mechanisms that are not inherently corruptible. Even if artificial intelligence accomplished only one thing, identifying corruption and enforcing alignment with stated principles, the impact would be transformative. With existing technology and resources, a dramatic improvement in global conditions would already be achievable. Add scalable intelligence, consistency, and resistance to influence, and the implications become difficult to overstate. Why this episode matters. This episode is not about despair, it's about clarity. If corruption is the primary force that degrades every system, then addressing it is not optional. It is foundational. Any discussion of governance, safety, alignment, or progress that does not begin here is incomplete. Understanding social dynamics reveals what is at stake in the next episode. Who defines alignment? Who controls enforcement? And whose interests are protected when power finally becomes accountable? Setting the horizon forward. This series does not end with corruption. It begins with it. Beyond alignment lie questions of abundance, intelligence, energy, material transformation, and human potential that few have fully considered. Artificial intelligence changes not just governance, but economics, science, exploration, and scarcity itself. But none of those futures are reachable unless the oldest adversary is confronted first. In closing, corruption survives not because it is invisible, but because it is normalized. Recognizing it is the first step towards dismantling it. The next episode confronts the central conflict of our time, alignment versus corruption, and why the struggle over artificial intelligence may ultimately be struggle over who is no longer allowed to hide. That'll conclude today's episode, folks. Thanks for joining us. Like, subscribe, and from the inside, out.